welcome back to the Compliance Kitchen podcast. This is Sylvia, and I am looking at some recent sanctions on Syria, and also we had some developments on Lebanon. So let's take a look at that in today's podcast episode. On July 28th, the Treasury Department announced designations by OFAC of a Turkey-based Al-Qaeda financial facilitator for materially assisting Al-Qaeda, and also designated a Syria-based terrorist fundraiser and a recruiter for providing material support to HTS or Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. And not sure about the pronunciation there. But as the release explains, these designations expose the continued efforts by Al-Qaeda and HTS to use the global formal financial system and highlight the need for continued vigilance against terrorist fundraising and financing and recruitment on the internet. So, also the same day, Treasury issued a separate release. They noted that OFAC sanctioned 8 Syrian prisons that are run by the Assad regime's intelligence and 5 senior security officials who control these prisons. The release told us that the prisons have been sites of human rights abuses against political prisoners and other detainees. The Assad regime has waged a war against the Syrian people, imprisoning hundreds of thousands, people who are calling for reform and change, of whom at least 14,000 have been tortured to death. The action furthered the objectives of the Syria Civil Protection Act of 2019, which seeks to hold the Assad regime accountable for commission of atrocities against detainees. And further in line with abuses against civilians and the Kurds in particular, OFAC also sanctioned Syrian armed group and 2 leaders of this group. The group's name is Ahrar al-Sharqiya. Again, I'm not sure how close I am to pronouncing this correctly. So as a result of these designations, as I'm sure you guys know, all property and interests in property of these individuals who were named and any entities that are owned by them, directly or indirectly, 50% or more, that's the OFAC 50% rule, that are in U.S. or in the possession or control of U.S. persons must be blocked and also reported to OFAC. So unless authorized by an OFAC license, OFAC's regulations generally prohibit all transactions by U.S. persons or within the U.S., including transactions that are transiting the U.S., that involve property or interest in property of blocked persons or persons who were designated under OFAC's regulations. There are also secondary sanctions risks. Engaging in certain transactions with the designated individuals may entail violating these secondary sanctions. OFAC can prohibit or impose strict conditions on the opening or maintaining in the U.S. of a correspondent bank account or a payable through bank account by a foreign financial institution if that financial institution knowingly conducted or facilitated any significant transaction on behalf of a specially designated global terrorist. So it's always good to remember that we do have these secondary sanctions, and they apply to or can apply to individuals or companies that ostensibly have no U.S. nexus, but then if you are transacting through the U.S. financial system, that's one way for the government to have nexus, even if you are a foreign company. So it's always good to keep those in mind. Now, if you need identifying information on the individuals that were designated, I have that for you guys on compliancekitchen.com. So now we can move on to Lebanon. and this is coming from the EU. On July 30th, the Council of the EU issued a press release. This was in connection with them adopting a framework for targeted sanctions against Lebanon. The release tells us that the framework provides for the possibility of imposing sanctions against persons and entities responsible for undermining democracy and the rule of law in Lebanon. The sanctions would be in response to any actions such as obstructing or undermining the democratic political process in Lebanon, undermining elections, hampering the formation of a government, obstructing or undermining the implementation of plans to improve accountability and good governance in the public sector, including banking and financial sectors, hampering implementation of transparent and non-discriminatory legislation on the export of capital. Also, activities such as serious financial misconduct concerning public funds, insofar as the acts concerned are covered by the UN Convention Against Corruption and the unauthorized export of capital. The sanctions, if they are imposed, would consist of travel bans and asset freezes. So whoever gets sanctioned under this framework would not be able to travel into the EU or EU territories, and EU persons and entities would be forbidden from making funds available to those sanctioned under this framework. Now, of course, I have all the links available on compliancekitchen.com if you guys need to take a closer look at the framework and also the press release.